Continuing where I left off, Chapter 22. Next day, having been invited by Count, Prince Andrei went to dine at the Rostovs and spent the rest of the day there. Everyone in the house realized on whose account he had come, and Prince Andrei, making no secret of it, tried to be with Natasha the whole time. Not only in the soul of the frightened, but ecstatically happy Natasha. But throughout the entire household there was a feeling of awe, anticipation, as if something of great moment were about to take place. The Countess looked with sad and sternly serious eyes at Prince Andrei when he talked to Natasha, and timidly started some artificial, inconsequential conversation as soon as he looked her way. Sonia was afraid to leave Natasha and afraid of being in the way if she stayed with her. Natasha turned pale in a panic of expectation every time she was left alone with him for a moment. Prince Andrei surprised her by his diffidence. She felt that he wanted to say something to her, but that he could not bring himself to speak. In the evening, after Prince Andrei had gone, the Countess went to Natasha and whispered, "Well, Mamma, for heaven's sake, don't ask me anything now. It is impossible to talk about it," said Natasha. But all the same, that night Natasha lay a long time in her mother's bed, staring straight before her, elated and apprehensive by turns. She told her how he had complimented her, how he had told her he was going abroad and asked where they would spend the summer, and then how he had asked her about Boris. "But such a thing never happened to me before," she said. "Only I feel afraid in his presence. I'm always afraid when I'm with him." "What does that mean? Does it mean it's the real thing? Does it? Mamma, are you asleep?" "No, my darling. I'm frightened myself," answered her mother. "Go now." "But I won't be able to sleep. How silly it is to sleep. Oh, mamma, mamma dear, nothing like this has ever happened to me before," she exclaimed, amazed and awed by the feeling she was conscious of in herself. "And could we ever have dreamed?" It seemed to Natasha that she had fallen in love with Prince Andrei the very first time she saw him in Otrano. It was as if she was frightened by this strange, unforeseen happiness of meeting him again, the very man she had chosen even then. She was firmly convinced she had done so, and of finding him, as it seemed, not indifferent to her, and that he should have come to Petersburg just when we are here, and that we should have met at the ball. It is fate, it is clearly fate, that everything has led up to this. Even then, the very moment I saw him, I felt something special." "What did he say to you? What are those verses? Read them to me," said her mother thoughtfully, referring to some verses Prince Andrei had written in Natasha's album. "Mamma, it's nothing to be ashamed of that he's a widower, is it?" "Hush, Natasha. Pray to God. Marriages are made in heaven." "Darling mamma, how I love you! How happy I am!" cried Natasha, hugging her mother and shedding tears of joy and excitement. And that very time Prince Andrei was sitting with Pierre, telling him of his love for Natasha and his firm resolve to make her his wife. That evening the Countess Elena Vassilyevna gave a reception. The French ambassador was there, and a foreign prince of the blood who had lately become a frequent visitor of the Countess, and a great number of brilliant ladies and gentlemen. Pierre had come down and wandered through the rooms, withdrawn and preoccupied, his sombre air attracting general attention. Since the night of the ball he had felt the approach of one of his attacks of depression, and had been making a desperate effort to combat it. Subsequent to his wife's intimacy with the royal prince, Pierre had unexpectedly been appointed to a gentleman-in-waiting, and from that time he began to feel a sense of oppression and a shame in court society, and his former dark thoughts of the vanity of all things human had begun to assail him more and more frequently. At the same time, the feeling he had noticed between Natasha, whom he considered his protégée, and his friend Prince Andrei deepened his gloom by emphasizing the contrast between his friend's situation and his own. He strove equally to avoid thinking about his wife and about Natasha and Prince Andrei. Again, everything seemed to him insignificant in comparison with eternity. Again, the question, what is it all for, presented itself, and he forced himself to toil day and night at Masonic work in the hope of warding off the evil spirit threatening him. Toward midnight, after he had left the Countess's apartments, he was upstairs in his own low-ceilinged, smoke-filled room, sitting at a table in a shabby dressing-gown, and copying out the original documents of the Scottish Freemasons, when someone came in. It was Prince Andrei. "Oh, it's you," said Pierre, looking preoccupied and disgruntled. "I'm at work, as you see," he added, pointing to his manuscript with the air of those unhappy people who regard their work as a means of salvation from the adversities of life. The adversities of life. Prince Andrei stood before him, his face radiant, ecstatic with renewed life, and, insensible to his friend's sad expression, smiled down on him with the egoism of happiness. "Well, my dear boy," he said, "I wanted to talk to you yesterday, and now I've come to tell you about it. I have never experienced anything like this before. I am in love, my friend." Suddenly Pierre heaved a sigh and sprawled heavily on the sofa beside Prince Andrei. "With Natasha Rostova, I suppose," he said. "Yes, yes, who else? I should never have believed it possible, but the feeling is stronger than I. Yesterday I was in torment, in agony, but even that torment I would have not exchanged for anything in the world. I have never lived before. Only now have I begun to live, but I cannot live without her. But can she love me? Am I too old for her? Why don't you say something?" I I What shall I say?" said Pierre, suddenly getting up and walking about the room. "I have always thought that girl is such a treasure, such a... She is a rare girl. My dear friend, I urge you, don't reason, don't doubt. Marry, marry, marry. And there will be no happier man on earth. Of that I am sure. But what of her? She loves you." "Don't talk nonsense," said Prince Andrei, smiling and looking into Pierre's eyes. "She does, I know," cried Pierre vehemently. "No, do listen," said Prince Andrei, taking hold of his arm and stopping him. "Do you know the state I am in? I must talk about it to someone." "Well, go on, talk, I am very glad," said Pierre, and indeed his face had changed, his brow smoothed, and he listened gladly to his friend. Prince Andrei seemed, and really was, an entirely different new man. What had become of his ennui, his contempt for life, his disillusionment? Pierre was the only person to whom he could bring himself to speak frankly, and to him he revealed all that was in his heart. He readily and confidently made plans, reaching far into the future, declaring that he could not sacrifice his happiness to the caprices of his father, that he would either compel him to consent to the marriage and love her, or would dispense with his consent altogether. Then he marveled at the feeling that had taken possession of him as a something strange, incomprehensible, not of his own volition. "I should never have believed it if anyone had told me I could love like this. It is not like anything I have ever felt before. The whole world is divided into two halves for me now. One is she, and there all is joy, hope, light. The other is where she is not, and there is all gloom and darkness." "Darkness and gloom," Pierre repeated. "Yes, yes, I understand that. I cannot help loving the lights. I cannot be blamed for that, and I am very happy. Can you understand me? I know you are glad for me." "Yes, yes," Pierre assented, looking at his friend with sad, sympathetic eyes. The brighter Prince Andrei's fate appeared to him, the darker seemed his own. Chapter 23. Prince Andrei needed his father's consent to his marriage, and to obtain it, set out for the country the following day. The father received his son's news with outward composure, but inward wrath. He could not comprehend how anyone could wish to alter his life, introduce anything new into it, when his own was so near its end. "If they would only let me live my life out as I want to," the old man said to himself, "then they may do as they please." With his son, however, he employed the diplomacy he reserved for important occasions, adopting a calm if he discussed the whole matter. In the first place, the marriage was not a brilliant one as regards birth, wealth, or distinction. Secondly, Prince Andrei was not in his first youth, and his health was poor. The old man laid special stress on this, while she was very young. Thirdly, there was his son, whom it would be a pity to entrust to a mere child. Fourthly and finally, the father said, looking ironically at his son, "I beg you to put it off for a year. Go ahead, take a cure, look for a German tutor, as you intended to, for Prince Nikolai, and then if you love, passion, obstinacy, what you will, is so great, then marry. And that is my last word on the subject. Mark me, my last," concluded the prince in a tone which showed that nothing would make him alter his decision. Prince Andrei saw clearly that the old man hoped that either his feelings or those of his prospective bride would not stand the test of a year, or that he, the old prince, would die before then, and he decided to act in accordance with his father's wishes and defer his marriage for a year. 3 weeks after his last visit to the Rostovs, Prince Andrei returned to Petersburg. The day after her talk with her mother, Natasha spent the whole day expecting Bolkonsky, but he did not come. The next day and the next were the same. Pierre did not appear either, and Natasha, not knowing that Prince Andrei had gone to see his father, did not know how to interpret his absence. 3 weeks passed in this way. Natasha had no desire to go anywhere, and wandered from room to room like a ghost, listless and disconsolate, weeping in secret at night, and not going to her mother in the evening. She was irritable and continually blushing. It seemed to her that everyone knew of her disappointment, and was laughing and pitying her. Strong was her inner grief, this wound to her vanity intensified her misery. Once she went to her mother and was about to say something, when suddenly she burst into tears. Her tears were those of an offended child, who does not know why it is being punished. The countess tried to comfort her. At first Natasha listened to her mother, but all at once she interrupted her. "Stop, Mama. I am not even thinking about it, and I don't want to. He came and then just left off. Just left off." Her voice trembled, and she almost cried again, but recovered herself and went on. "And I don't at all want to get married. I'm afraid of him, and anyway I've quite got over it now." The day after this conversation, Natasha put on the old dress that she knew had the peculiar quality of making her feel cheerful, when she wore it in the mornings, and on that day, as soon as she was dressed, resumed her old way of life, that had been given up since the ball. After morning tea, she went to the ballroom, which she particularly liked for its loud renaissance, and began singing her Solviego. When she had finished the first exercise, she stood in the middle of the room and repeated a musical phrase that specially pleased her. She listened with delight, as though it were quite unexpected, to the charm of those pouring out, filling the emptiness of the ballroom, and slowly dying away, and at all once her heart felt lighter. Why think so much about it? Things are nice as they are, she said to herself, and began walking up and down the room, not stepping naturally on the resounding parquet floor, but at each step bending her foot from heel to toe. She had her favorite pair of new shoes, and listening to the rhythmical tap of the heel and the creak of the toe with as much pleasure as she had listened to the sound of her own voice. Passing a mirror, she glanced into it. There, that's me, the expression on her face seemed to say. And very nice too. I don't need anybody. A footman wanted to come in to clear away something in the room, but she would not let him in, and after closing the door behind him, continued her promenade. That morning she had returned to her favorite mood of liking and being delighted with herself. What a charming creature that Natasha is, she again said of herself, speaking as some third collective male person, pretty, young, and with a voice. Gives nobody any trouble if they leave her in peace. But however much they left her in peace, she could no longer be at peace, and she instantly felt this. In the versatile, in the vestibule, the hall door was open, and someone asked if they were at home. Then footsteps were heard. Natasha, looking at herself in the mirror, did not see herself. She was listening to the sounds in the hall. When she saw herself, her face was white. It was he. She knew this for certain, though she hardly heard his voice through the closed doors. Pale and distracted, Natasha ran into the drawing room. "Mamma, Bukowski has come," she said. "Mamma, this is awful. It's unbearable. And I don't want to be tortured. What am I to do?" Before the Countess could answer, Prince Andrei had entered the room, looking grave and anxious. As soon as he saw Natasha, his face lit up. He kissed the Countess's hand, and Natasha and sat down near the sofa. "It's a long time since we have had the pleasure," began the Countess. But Prince Andrei interrupted her by answering her implied question, obviously in haste to say what he had to say. "I have not been to see you all this time because I went to see my father. I had to discuss something of great importance with him. I returned only last night," he said, glancing at Natasha. "I should like to have a talk with you, Countess," he added after pausing a moment. The Countess lowered her eyes, sighing deeply. "I am at your disposal," she murmured. Natasha knew she ought to go, but she was unable to move. Her throat tightened, and unmindful of her manners, she sat starry wide-eyed at Prince Andrei. "At once? This very instant? No, it cannot be," she thought. He glanced at her again, and that glance convinced her that she was not mistaken. Yes, at once, that very instant, her fate would be decided. "Go, Natasha. I will send for you," said the Countess in a whisper. Natasha looked at Prince Andrei and her mother with frightened, imploring eyes, and left. "I have come, Countess, to ask for your daughter's hand," said Prince Andrei. The Countess' face flushed hotly, but she said nothing. "You offer," she gravely began. He sat silent, looking into her eyes. "Your offer," again she hesitated in confusion, "is agreeable to us, and I accept your offer. I am happy, and my husband, I hope, but it will depend on her. I will speak to her as soon as I have your consent. Do you give it to me?" asked Prince Andrei. "Yes," said the Countess, holding out her hand to him, and with mixed feelings of estrangement and tenderness pressed her lips to his forehead as he bent to kiss her hand. She wished to love him as a son, but felt that he was a stranger, a man who inspired fear in her. "I am sure that my husband will consent," said the Countess, "but your father—" My father, whom I have informed of my plans, has made it an express condition that the marriage should not take place for a year. I meant to speak of this to you, said Prince Andrei. It's true that Natasha is still young, but so long. It cannot be helped, said Prince Andrei with a sigh. I will send her to you, said the Countess, and left the room. Lord, have mercy on us, she kept repeating as she went to look for her daughter. Sonia told her that Natasha was in her bedroom. She was sitting on the bed, pale and dry-eyed, gazing at the icon and whispering something as she rapidly crossed herself. Seeing her mother, she sprang up and flew to her. Well, Mamma? Well? Go to him. He has asked for your hand, said the Countess, coldly as it seemed to Natasha. Go, go, the mother murmured in a reproachful tone, sighing deeply as her daughter ran off. Natasha could not have said how she reached the drawing room. When she entered the room and saw him, she hesitated. Can it be that this stranger has now become everything to me? She asked herself, and instantly answered, yes, everything. He alone is now dearer to me than everything in the world. Prince Andrei approached her with downcast eyes. I have loved you from the first moment I saw you. May I hope? He raised his eyes and was struck by a serious and passionate look on her face, a look that seemed to say, why ask? Why doubt what you cannot help knowing? Why speak when words cannot express what one feels? She drew near him and stopped. He looked. He took her hand and kissed it. Do you love me? Yes, yes, Natasha murmured, as if in vexation, and after drawing a deep breath, then another, her breathing became more rapid, and she began to sob. What is it? What is the matter? Oh, I am so happy, she replied, smiling through her tears, and bending closer to him, and hesitating an instant, as if asking herself whether she kiss him. Prince Andrei held her hands and looked into her eyes, but he failed to find in his heart his former love for her. Some sudden change seemed to have taken place in him. There was no longer the former poetic and mysterious charm of desire. Instead, he felt pity for her feminine and childish weakness, fear before her devotion and truthfulness, an impressive yet sweet sense of duty binding him to her forever. The present feeling, though not so bright and poetic as the former, was stronger and more serious. Did your mother tell you that it cannot be for a year? Asked Prince Andrei, still looking into her eyes. Can this really be I, the baby girl as everyone called me? Natasha was thinking. Is it possible that from this time forth I am to be the wife and equal of this strange, dear, clever man, whom even my father looks up to? Can it be true? Can it be true that now there will be no more playing with life? That now I am grown up? Now responsibility rests on me for every word and deed. But what was it he asked me? No, she replied, but she had not understood his question. Forgive me, said Prince Andrei, but you are so young, and I have already been through so much in life. I am afraid for you. You do not know yourself yet. You do not yet know yourself. Natasha listened with concentrated attention, trying without success to understand the meaning of his words. Hard as this year will be for me, delaying my happiness, continued Prince Andrei, it will give you time to be sure of yourself. I asked you to make me happy in a year, but you are free. Our engagement shall remain a secret, and you should find that you do not love me, or should you come to love, he said with an unnatural smile. Why do you say that? Natasha interrupted. You know that from the very day you came to Otranelm, I have loved you, she said, firmly convinced that she was speaking the truth. In a year you will learn to know yourself. A whole year, Natasha suddenly exclaimed, only now realizing that the marriage was fur, to be the fur for a year. But why a year? Why a year? Prince Andrei began to explain to her the reasons for this delay. Natasha did not hear him. And it cannot be otherwise, she asked. Prince Andrei made no reply, but his face expressed the impossibility of altering the decision. It's awful. Oh, it's awful, awful, Natasha cried suddenly, and again broke into sobs. I shall die if I have to wait a year. It's impossible. It's dreadful. She looked into his face and saw his look of compassion and perplexity. No, no, I'll do anything, she said, instantly checking her tears. I am so happy. Her father and mother came into the room and gave the betrothed pair their blessing. From that day, Prince Andrei began to visit the Rostovs as Natasha's fiancé. Chapter 24. There was no betrothal ceremony, and Natasha's engagement to Bukowski was not announced. Prince Andrei insisted on this. He said that since he was responsible for the delay, he ought to bear the whole burden of it, that he considered himself bound for life by his word, but did not wish to bind Natasha, and gave her complete freedom. If after 6 months she felt that she did not love him, she would have a perfect right to refuse him. Of course, neither Natasha nor her parents would hear of this, but he was adamant. Andrei came every day to the Rostovs, but he did not treat Natasha as if he were engaged to her. He did not use the familiar "though," but always said "you" when speaking to her, and kissed only her hand. From the day of their engagement, quite different, simple, familiar relations were established between them. It was as if they had not known each other till then. Both liked to recall how they had regarded each other when they were nothing to one another. Now they felt they were quite different beings. Then they were artificial. Now they were natural and sincere. At first the family felt a certain awkwardness in their intercourse with Prince Andrei. He seemed a man from another world, and Natasha spent a great deal of time trying to accustom them to him, proudly assuring them all that he only appeared to be different, but was really just like everybody else, and that she was not afraid of him, and no one else need be. After a few days they grew used to him, and no longer constrained in his presence, resumed their customary way of life, in which he now took part. He knew how to talk about the management of his estates with the Count, about fashions with the Countess and Natasha, and about albums and embroidery with Sonia. Sometimes among themselves, and even in Prince Andrei's presence, the Rostovs expressed their wonder of how it had all happened, and at the evident signs presaging the event. Prince Andrei's visit to Otrano, their coming to Petersburg, the resemblance between Natasha and Prince Andrei, which the old nurse had noticed on his first visit, the encounter between Nikolai and Andrei in 1805, and the numerous other incidents betokening what was to come, were remarked by the family. The house was pervaded with that poetic tedium and silence that always accompanies the presence of a betrothed couple. Often they all sat in the same room without saying a word. Sometimes the others would get up and go away, and the engaged couple left alone silent. They rarely spoke of their future life. Prince Andrei had certain qualms about mentioning it. Natasha shared this feeling, as she did all his feelings, which she constantly divined. Once she began to question him about his son. Prince Andrei blushed, a thing he often did now, and which Natasha particularly loved in him, and said that his son would not live with them. Why not? Asked Natasha in dismay. I cannot take him away from his grandfather. And besides, how I should have loved him, said Natasha, instantly surmising what was in his mind. But I know you don't want to furnish the occasion for our being criticized. The old count sometimes came to Prince Andrei, kissed him, and asked his advice about Petya's education or Nikolai's position in the service. The old countess sighed as she looked at the lovers. Sonia, always afraid of being in their way, constantly tried to find excuses for leaving them alone, even when they had no desire to be alone. When Prince Andrei talked, he could tell a story very well. Natasha listened with pride. When she spoke, she noticed with fear and joy that he contemplated her with an intent, scrutinizing gaze. What does he hope to find in me? She asked herself in perplexity. What is he searching for with that look? Suppose what he's seeking in me is not there. Sometimes she fell into one of the mad, merry moods characteristic of her, and then it was an especial delight to see him and to hear him laugh. He seldom laughed, but when he did he completely abandoned himself to his mirth, and after such laughter she always felt closer to him. Natasha would have been perfectly happy had not the thought of their impending separation filled her with dread. On the eve of his departure from Petersburg, Prince Andrei brought with him Pierre, who had not once been to the Rostov since the ball. Pierre seemed troubled and embarrassed and talked chiefly to the Countess. Natasha sat down near a little chess table with Sonia, thereby inviting Prince Andrei to join them. He went to them. "You have known Besakov a long time, haven't you?" he asked. "Do you like him?" "Yes, he's awfully nice, but so funny." And she began as people invariably did when speaking of Pierre, to tell anecdotes of his absent-mindedness, many of which were pure invention. "You know, I have confided our secret to him," said Prince Andrei. "I have known him since childhood. He has a heart of gold. I beg you, Natalia," Prince Andrei said with sudden seriousness. "I'm going away, and God knows what may happen. You may cease to— Oh, I know, I am not to say that. Only one thing. Whatever happens to you while I'm away— What could happen? If there should be any sort of trouble," Prince Andrei continued, "I beg you, Mademoiselle Sophie, whatever it may be, go to him, and to no one else for advice and help. He is the most absent-minded and absurd fellow, but he has a heart of gold." Neither her parents nor Sonia nor Prince Andrei himself could have foreseen the effect of the parting on Natasha. Flushed and agitated, she wandered about the house the whole day, dry-eyed, busying herself with the most trivial matters, as if not realizing what lay ahead of her. She did not cry even when he kissed her hand for the last time. Don't go," was all she said, but in a voice that made him wonder whether he really ought not to stay, and which he remembered long after. When he had gone, she still did not weep, but for several days sat in her room, dry-eyed, but taking no interest in anything, and only saying from time to time, "Oh, why did he go away?" But a fortnight after his departure, to the surprise of those around her, she recovered from her spiritual disorder and became her old self again, but with a change in her moral physiognomy. Psychonomy, as a child's face changes after a long illness. And I'll leave it there. Thank you for watching. I hope you're enjoying the series. Please give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. You can also leave a comment below. You can subscribe or do nothing and watch. And I see you in the next video. Thank you. Bye.